According to Tony Robbins, 6 human needs provide the framework for a life of fulfillment. In this video, I'm going to explore each in turn, and in particular, how writing interacts with these needs, why writing can bring either enormous joy or great frustration, depending on the approach you take. Without an understanding of these needs, you will be searching in the dark for happiness, and a consistent writing practice may be elusive. The 6 needs are certainty, variety, significance, connection, growth, and contribution. Everything we do is to meet one of these needs. We can meet them in positive ways or in destructive ways. If something meets our needs consistently, then we find satisfaction and we do it consistently. If it doesn't, we may quit. Certainty is a need for security and predictability in life. A good example would be going to the same breakfast place every Sunday morning and getting exactly the same order. In another context, it might be needing to come first on a test every time as reassurance that you are the smartest person in the room. Now with writing, the source of certainty is that you are entirely your own boss. This is literally a world of your creation. Whatever happens to whoever is up to you. Now, if you're successful and you get an editor and you need to get published, etc., then other people come into the picture. You have to respond to other demands. But most of the time, it is you doing your work, and that is the source of stability. The major source of uncertainty here is that success is far from guaranteed, and it may be a long way off. I'm sure if you're a writer, you may be familiar with the experience of working for weeks on a short story. You send it off to a publication, they take a few months to get back to you, and then you find that email sitting in the inbox with the generic response. Even if you have a book deal, it's a long time to complete a novel, and then you have the uncertainty of whether it will go down well with the public. The solution here is to rely on yourself. This is a great response to uncertainty in general. My reasons for writing rely on nothing outside of me. For me, the certainty comes from the sense of pride in what I have written, enjoyment of the process for its own sake, and the sense of continuous learning and forward momentum through time. The second need is variety. This is basically a desire for novelty, new knowledge, new places, new people, new activities. Now, I bet writers and creatives in general score extremely high in this need. And the reason is that writing delivers this in great quantities. When you look at that blank page, you can literally go anywhere you want. You can time travel into the past or into the future. You can magic individuals out of thin air. You can even invent worlds. Now, the potential pitfalls are twofold. The first is in the editing phase, where this new idea no longer seems so fresh as it did when it first sprung to mind. The second is when you're working on a longer piece. So for the edit, I put a link in the description to a video I did previously on how you can shift your psychology to keep that sense of discovery even when going through your story for the second time. So you can check out that video. For the second one, I recommend a couple of things. So one is inserting frequent breaks into the writing, and for this you can draw on the other activities of being a writer. So that could be reading, learning your techniques, brainstorming, etc. I've also linked in the description to a short that I did about varying your environment, making sure that you're not always chained to your desk and you're out in the world where the ideas can flow more freely. Thirdly, significance. This need revolves around recognition. We need to be acknowledged as important and unique. For aspiring writers, this is the tough one. If you're Stephen King, it's easy to get that recognition. If you're just starting out, writing won't provide those easy hits of dopamine, of significance. This pain comes out in familiar forms. I'm just a genius that no one understands, or maybe when I'm dead, I'll be famous. As if the world needs to repent somehow for not recognizing your own importance. The identity of the tortured, starving artist is just significance in another guise. It's the idea of enduring more than anyone else could for the sake of your art. And there's a cultish sense of sacrifice and martyrdom about it. On the emotional level, yes, but I think it also derives from the previous point about uncertainty of success. So if the world isn't going to give you fame and riches, then you take that on voluntarily, as if it is a choice coming from a position of power. Now, I'm really not undermining some of the difficulties of writing and trying so hard for so long to create a successful piece, but I think there are other healthier ways of delivering this need for significance. Before I get into the solution, I want to raise the second destructive form of significance, which is perfectionism. Now, this is a big issue for me until some great people taught me a different approach. It can be damn useful, especially in the editing phase, but like every trait, there comes a tipping point where the trait becomes counterproductive. The tipping point is that perfectionism becomes a delaying tactic. You never dare to finish the work and get it out into the world to face the feedback. This is because deep down, you're afraid that people won't like it, and that will make you feel insignificant. And the greatest drawback is that it means you won't experiment and learn. You'll be stuck in your existing ways. Because you want to be perfect now, you'll fail to be great in the future. These two factors have the potential to kill our writing practice. They may tempt us to give up. So what is the response? Writers are creative people, so we also need to get creative with our own psychology. You can attach significance to different things. What about input instead of output? What about the fact that you turned up consistently for X number of weeks and finished the piece? Reward yourself for that. Make yourself feel significant. What about the progress you made since your first short story, or getting to share an idea that changed the way you see the world? This shift to a focus on input primarily has really helped me sustain my writing practice. But I still ask myself, quite often actually, is this just an admission of defeat? Is it hedging against failure to focus mainly on the input rather than the outcome? And I think the answer is, it depends what game you think life is. Is the game about achieving success in the future, or about enjoying what happens right now? Is life basically just one long commute until eventually you get to work in the morning? Is it mainly just being in the airport for years and then maybe one day you end up on holiday on the beach? Of course we want that holiday, but I'm coming to believe that the only game we play, the only game that matters whether we win or lose, is the mental game, and everything else flows from that. We've got the Buddhist to thank for this insight. Let me give you an example. Imagine you are a best-selling author. Your last book sold 4 million copies, but this year you only managed to sell 3 million copies. Now, how do you see that? Do you see that as the start of permanent decline? Or do you see it as a magnificent failure? Whoever we are, whatever our current level of objective, external success, it is the mind that decides how we feel. So get a little bit creative about how you view significance. It's not like the insight happens once and then you're set for the rest of time. This is something that I like to remind myself of on a weekly basis, and that's a useful tip for the other needs as well. The fourth need, stay with me now, this is a good one, is connection. This is essentially seeking out closer relationships, mainly with other people, but it can be more abstract too. So it can be with nature or spirituality. And I like to imagine sometimes the surfers bobbing up and down on the waves in the ocean. Again, writing makes you feel connected in so many ways. If you think of your favorite fictional character from childhood, well, now you get to create them and follow their lives through their ups and downs, through their trajectory, and spend literally days with these characters. I like the idea of connection with writers and artists from all time. Anyone who has ever sat down and tried to create something. I feel more connected with myself and the people that I have met. When I'm writing, sometimes I'm reminded of people I haven't seen in years who taught me a particular idea. I like to feel I've got the mission of doing justice to everything I've seen and everyone I've met. And again, it's important that this becomes a source of opportunity for connection rather than the burden of responsibility, because there you can get into the pitfalls of having to live up to that expectation and you get into dodgy territory with the need for significance. You can get even more abstract. How about connection with the truth? There's a great Hemingway quote where he was struggling with a bit of writer's block and he would say to himself, all you have to do is write one true sentence. Write the truest sentence you know. With all these forms of connection coming at you from multiple directions, there is a danger that essentially you become a hermit, seal yourself off in your office and forget the real people in the real world. Because in real life, people of course are a lot more complicated than the people that you literally get to create on the page. So don't fall into that temptation. Don't become a recluse. You can have a balance of connection in your writing and in your real life relationships as well. Remember who the writing is for. Time for the penultimate need now, which is growth. Now this is a desire to continuously improve, to expand your knowledge and abilities. Writing can deliver two forms of growth. The first is on the spiritual side and the second is more technical. You are expanding your capacity for empathy, for wonder, for seeing clearly and absorbing new ideas. At the same time, you are enhancing your ability to share these with other people. So it goes beyond your own life. There is enormous potential for growth here because essentially it calls on two opposite skills at the same time. The former is a capacity for experiencing great emotion, for being able to convey an explosion of truth in very precise, detailed ways with the right pacing, phrasing, structuring, and ordering. Now, the flip side of growth is impatience. We want to see the results fast. We want each piece to go down better than the last one. And this can create dangerous expectations. It can also bring too much focus on the writing itself rather than the foundations of the craft. So for example, Stephen King's advice is to read as much as you write. And when I read that, I thought that makes enormous sense. I'll definitely do that. But of course, I found myself writing for the vast majority of time because that felt like growth, that felt like more immediate return than doing the hard work, the longer term work of reading from the best authors out there and building that into the writing. It can be a similar vein also with learning the techniques, focusing simply on dialogue for a couple of days or character development or setting rather than trying to do them all at the same time in a piece. Here, the solution is to bring in one of the other needs, the need for variety. So use switching between these different activities as a form of novelty rather than a long-term burden that you have to carry in order to be a great writer in decades' time when you want that to be happening tomorrow. Now, congratulations, you've made it to the final need. I reckon if you've made it this far in the video, you're probably doing pretty well in keeping up with your writing practice, but of course these needs provide the underlying foundation. So let's go for the last one, contribution. This is the need to give. It comes in many forms: talent, love, time, money. The important thing is that the motivation is focused outwards on serving other people. With writing, your contribution is the human story. I like to think of all the books, movies, music I have ever enjoyed, and I'll play a little extract of a song or look at pictures of famous authors before I start to write in the morning. I really like the idea of reciprocity. The root of the word inspiration literally means breathing in, and I like this idea of breathing in and breathing out, experiencing something great and then creating your own work. A creative practice like writing can become your way of giving back, and being part of this community delivers great deals of connection and significance too. With this final need, you want to recognize that the contribution is quite intangible with a creative practice. You may get awesome feedback from people, but in the meantime, you'll be spending a lot of time away from the world, away from the people that you are doing it for, because you are focusing on your writing. So it's important to be aware of why you're doing it and who you are doing it for. I also recommend thinking about other forms of more tangible contribution that you can get in your life through your job, potentially through volunteering. Have a little think about that rounded picture. Let me wrap this up. These 6 human needs provide the framework for a life of fulfillment. They motivate all our actions. So understanding them, we can direct them towards happiness. Writing can serve as your vehicle for fulfillment, but only if you know yourself and your eyes are open to its pain points. Acting on this knowledge will empower you to write consistently and transform your experience of life. Now it's time for an action. Ask yourself firstly, can writing deliver these needs for me? Be honest. The worst thing is to try to pursue your needs in the wrong way. If your answer is yes, then maybe you faced roadblocks in the past, times where you gave up writing for a while or it just wasn't flowing. Go back and examine those now and ask yourself which needs were being neglected and what can I change in my writing or in my life to hit those needs. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.